All right. The strategic archive for this morning session must now record the total and permanent detachment of physical resource values from the digital settlement grid, as the global financial architecture has officially entered a state of terminal resynchronization. While the mainstream administrative channels are still attempting to broadcast messages of order and resilience, the raw data from the primary clearing nodes confirms that the ability to reconcile digital promises against physical inventory has effectively vanished. John CC is the archive where we strip away the managed optics and track the terminal movement of the world's tangible wealth. Today's data proves that the era of unbacked digital expansion has hit the immovable wall of absolute resource scarcity, and the state has responded by invoking the final protocols of systemic lockout. The shadow market for silver has officially entered a blackout phase this morning, with physical delivery premiums in the primary Eastern hubs now being recorded at over 500% of the last legacy paper quotes. We are receiving verified reports from the strategic procurement sectors that the remaining silver inventory in the G7 warehouses has been officially reclassified as restricted national collateral, effectively voiding every private commercial claim in existence. This is the ultimate force majeure event, a quiet admission that the industrial world can no longer function without seizing the remaining physical metal to protect the defense and infrastructure grids. The math of the reset is reaching its logical singularity. The paper tokens are now mathematically void, while the physical bar has become the most restricted sovereign asset on the planet. Gold has reportedly cleared a shadow price of $7,200 in the private international settlement tiers as the first official nodes of the new resource-backed digital unit are activated in the global south. Internal ledger data proves that the world's primary energy and metal producers have officially disconnected their value chains from the legacy Western clearing system, creating an instantaneous vacuum of demand for unbacked fiat units. We are witnessing the economic decapitation of the debt-based world in real time, as the value of every digital account is being re-anchored to a vault that our data proves is currently empty of private, unencumbered metal. The John CC archive is documenting this historic inversion, providing the only data-driven map for the sovereign individual in a world where the screens have stopped providing the truth. Inventory data from the primary transport nodes confirms that military jurisdiction has been extended over the entire transit network for strategic metals to ensure the continuity of state-led high-tech manufacturing. This move effectively nationalizes the remaining physical wealth of the private sector and places it into a sovereign escrow that the general public will never be allowed to access. If your silver and gold were not in your direct physical possession by the time the sun rose this morning, the data suggests you are now an unsecured creditor to a bankrupt administrative regime. The only wealth that retains functional purchasing power in this new era is the wealth that has no digital footprint and no administrative delete button. ATM networks across the hemisphere remain in a state of total hardware blackout, and internal tracking of the federal wire systems shows that liquidity flow has hit a state of absolute zero. This is the definition of a systemic heart attack. The digital numbers are still visible on the internal bank ledgers, but they have lost all functional link to the real economy of tangible goods and services. Our archive has consistently shown that the depletion of the physical vaults would eventually lead to this terminal lockdown of the digital grid. This is why the John CC mission remains focused on the warehouse reports. The movement of silver and gold was the only beacon of truth in a world of fabricated financial narratives. The industrial impact of this morning's data is a total collapse of the advanced semiconductor and telecommunications manufacturing sectors, as the physical silver required for circuit-level production has been reclassified as a restricted military resource. The high-tech economy is discovering that it was a guest in a physical world that it failed to respect. And today, that world has officially revoked its access. You cannot maintain a global digital empire on a foundation of empty vaults, and the data proves that the technological era is now entering a period of forced resource contraction. The John CC archive is documenting the paralysis of the industrial base, as the paper derivatives that once propped it up are officially zeroed out. Capital flight has now reached the stage of total administrative seizure, as the Global Economic Stability Act is being used to freeze all international transfers of digital wealth into any form of physical asset. We are seeing reports of private citizens being blocked from even accessing decentralized ledger interfaces, a move designed to prevent the population from realizing the true extent of the currency's devaluation. However, the data confirms that the sovereign wealth funds and the global elite completed their migration into physical resources months ago, leaving the public to bear the total weight of the reset. The archives will show that the exit doors were only available to those who understood the data before the digital grid was officially weaponized. Options and futures for the entire commodity complex have been administratively vaporized as of the morning session, as the exchanges have invoked the final force majeure clauses to prevent the total bankruptcy of the clearinghouses. This is the end of the paper price discovery mechanism, where the rules were deleted at the exact moment the banks lost the ability to deliver the metal. When the vaults are empty, the paper is void, and that is exactly what the current ledger data is revealing in the silent halls of the Western exchanges. The math of the reset is a final lesson in the dangers of trusting a digital screen over the physical weight of a tangible asset held in your hand. Geopolitical sources confirm that the new resource-backed settlement unit has been officially adopted by over 80% of the world's commodity producers as of this morning, creating a parallel financial universe that does not recognize Western debt as valid collateral. This is the final fracture of the global trade system, leaving the UN-backed dollar and euro as stranded assets that no longer have utility in the international resource markets. We are seeing the domestic purchasing power of these fiat units collapse, at a rate that the official trackers are no longer permitted to display. The John C.C. archive is recording the death of the fractional reserve illusion and the birth of the new physical standard that will define the next century. The shadow banking sector is currently in a state of terminal liquidation, as the collateral chains for silver and gold derivatives have officially snapped under the pressure of the 500% physical premium. Every paper ounce that was used to manipulate the markets for the last decade is now being revealed as a fraud with thousands of simultaneous claims, leading to a legal paralysis that no court system will ever be able to resolve. This is the mathematical singularity of the reset, where the infinite expansion of digital debt finally hits the immovable wall of physical scarcity. The vaults are officially empty of paper promises, and are now being filled with the hard reality of a new physical standard that the state is currently seizing. We are seeing a total blackout of these statistics on all mainstream social media and financial news platforms, as the National Security Information Decree has been triggered to prevent a coordinated run on the remaining physical grocery and energy supplies. However, the John C.C. data is being broadcast through decentralized networks to ensure that the strategic record of this transition remains accessible to the sovereign individual. The rate of currency devaluation in the shadow markets is now exceeding the ability of any bank to update its digital tickers, creating a state of total economic disorientation for the general public. If you are waiting for an official announcement to protect your wealth, you are ignoring the data that is already screaming. The psychological warfare being deployed today is focused on global unity and the promise of a new universal digital credit that will restore order to the markets by tomorrow morning. This is the ultimate deception, designed to move the population from a failed debt system into a programmable surveillance system, where your ability to buy resources is a permission-based event. Sovereignty requires the ability to see through this trap, and to ensure that your wealth is anchored in the physical world where it cannot be tracked, frozen, or deleted by a central committee. The archives of this reset will be the primary source for understanding how the global population was managed during the transition. The 150-day moving average has moved into a vertical climb that defies all standard technical analysis, representing the total abandonment of the fiat currency units by every primary producer on the planet. There is no longer a chart in the traditional sense. There is only a record of a currency dying in real time against the only things that cannot be printed or faked by an algorithm. This is the great decoupling, where physical assets have finally broken free from the paper gravity that has held them down for generations. The data shows that the demand for physical metal at the sovereign level is already 100 times higher than the total available supply, creating a vacuum that will consume the value of every legacy asset. We are entering the final minutes before the official announcement of the new monetary standard, where the world is waiting in silence to see the form of the global administrative reboot. Reports from the private security industry indicate that the primary bullion vaults in the West are now under the direct command of a unified military authority to back the new emergency settlement units. The door to secure your own wealth has not just closed. It has been barricaded by the total power of the state to preserve its own existence at the expense of the individual. Scarcity is the only law that matters today, and those who did not stay physical are now facing a reality where their digital life savings are functionally non-existent. The synergy between the total energy blackout and the financial freeze is creating a state of nature for the Western financial markets. As the cost of maintaining the digital grid exceeds the actual value of the debt it carries, the system is naturally reverting to the physical standard of the vaults. The John C.C. archive has consistently shown that you cannot build a digital empire on a foundation of paper lies, and today that foundation has officially collapsed. We are recording the final data points of the paper regime so that the sovereign individuals of the future can understand the mathematical inevitability of the collapse and the absolute necessity of staying sovereign through physical resources. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and stay tuned to these archives, because the events of the current hour will define the economic destiny of the human race for the next century. The global market has reset, the paper mask has been torn away, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the halls of power and the vaults of the sovereign. Thank you for watching, and remember to always trust the raw warehouse data over the scripted promises of a bankrupt administration. The clock has struck midnight for the old world, and today is the date the ledger was finally settled in the weight of real physical metal. The final shadow market update confirms that the IMF has officially suspended its SDR accounting, effectively ending the era of coordinated Western monetary policy. Every nation is now effectively an island of resources, forced to rely on whatever physical gold and silver it has managed to secure within its own borders. We are seeing the total fragmentation of the global trade system, where only nations with a resource-backed currency are able to participate in the new economy. The data proves that the era of globalism was a debt-fueled hallucination that has finally been corrected by the reality of the vaults and the hard math of physical scarcity. Intellectual honesty requires us to record that the coming sunrise will likely see a controlled communication blackout, as the new social credit system is integrated into the retail banking infrastructure. If your digital devices stop functioning, remember that the physical truth of your assets remains unchanged by the status of the network or the silence of the state. The trend of the reset is mathematically locked, and no amount of censorship can bring back the physical metal that has already left the Western exchanges. The time for speculation is officially over. The time for direct physical ownership is all that remains for those who wish to survive the transition. The 150 exponential moving average has been replaced by a vertical spike that represents the final short squeeze of the global banking architecture. The banks that sold what they did not have are now being systematically liquidated, and their assets are being absorbed by the sovereign entities that respect the laws of physical scarcity. The data proves that the world has moved beyond the point of hedging and into a state of total revaluation, where the possession of physical resources is the only metric that defines purchasing power in the new era. This is not an opening. It is a revelation of the new physical reality of the world. In a world of total digital deception and central bank manipulation, the raw, verifiable movement of physical silver and gold is the only beacon of truth that cannot be extinguished by a central authority. The alerts have turned into the reality of terminal default, and the Strategic Archive has captured every moment of this historic transition. We will continue to provide the data of the new physical standard as the world rebuilds from the ruins of the paper era. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and watch the John C.C. Archive as we navigate the first hours of the new economic world. The ledger is closed, and the weight of metal is the only truth that remains.